Exactly. Means there'd be no escape. All right, this election alert means we are getting to our first big poll closing in about 7 seconds at the top of the hour. We've got 6 states closing, and here are our first projections of the results in these states. Starting with Georgia. In the great state of Georgia, the presidential race in Georgia at this hour, NBC News projects it is too early to call, although we do expect we'll get a lot of Georgia vote very quickly. Moving on to Kentucky, where we had some polls close an hour ago, but now the state of Kentucky is closed. There, NBC News projects that Donald Trump has won the presidential election in Kentucky. Moving to the Northeast, to Vermont, NBC News projects that Kamala Harris has won the presidential race in the great state of Vermont. Moving now to Virginia. NBC News projects that in the state of Virginia, the presidential race is too early to call. Moving now to South Carolina. South Carolina polls are closed, and NBC News projects that it is too early to call. And finally, our last poll closing of this hour is in Indiana. We had Indiana, some polls closed an hour ago. Now the state of Indiana has closed. NBC News projects that in Indiana, the race is too early to call. I will say we are expecting quite a lot of vote from Georgia and most of Florida, even as some of Florida's voting precincts are not closed. We'll get a lot of that vote soon. Right now, in terms of the road to 270, we're very early on that road. Donald Trump with 8 electoral votes and Kamala Harris with 3. Let's take a look at what we've got in the Senate race thus far. We do have some Senate races in states that have just closed. In Virginia, we've got Democratic incumbent Senator Tim Kaine and Hung Cao, who is the Republican challenger right there. NBC News projects that the Virginia Senate race is too early to call. Going now to Indiana. In the Indiana Senate race, we've got Republican Jim Banks and Democrat Valerie McRae. NBC News projects that the Indiana Senate race is too early to call. And up to Vermont, where incumbent independent who caucuses with the Democrats, Bernie Sanders, is facing Republican Gerald Malloy in Vermont. The Senate race, NBC News projects, is too early to call. Let's look at a couple of governor's races. In Indiana, we have a very closely watched governor's race, which itself is interesting, given Indiana's reputation as a strong red state. Republican Mike Braun versus Democrat Jennifer McCormick. The Indiana governor's race is too early to call. And finally, the Vermont governor's race at this hour between Republican incumbent Phil Scott and Democratic challenger Esther Charleston. The Vermont governor's race is too early to call. Those are our initial projections for the first big round of poll closings. Second, we do have a couple of additional calls. In Indiana, in the presidential race in Indiana, NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won in the state of Indiana. We've got an additional Indiana call in the Senate race. The Indiana Senate race, NBC News now projects that Republican Jim Banks has won that race. Again, early calls just after poll closings in Indiana. There is with Governor Cooper, we have a projection to make. NBC News can now project that in the great state of Vermont, independent senator, caucuses with the Democrats, Bernie Sanders has been reelected as Vermont's senator. That means NBC News has projected in Vermont that Kamala Harris has won the presidential there and Bernie Sanders is reelected there. We're also, of course, watching the governor's race in Vermont. Interestingly, there is an incumbent Republican governor in Vermont. He said every step of the way. Yeah, and just as influential as he's ever been in national politics. All right, we are less than 10 seconds away from the next poll closing, and this one includes a big one, a big swing state of North Carolina. As we hit 7:30 Eastern time, NBC News can project that in the North Carolina presidential race, no surprise here, it is too early to call. North Carolina, not the only state that's closing at 7:30. NBC News can also project in the West Virginia presidential contest. In West Virginia, Donald Trump is the winner. West Virginia's presidential race, NBC News projecting that right now for Donald Trump. And in Ohio, NBC News is projecting that in the presidential race, it is too early to call between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Looking at the road to 270, we are still just barely on our way. 23 electoral votes thus far for Donald Trump, with the West Virginia, Indiana, and Kentucky races called for him, and Vermont thus far called for Kamala Harris, 23-3 on the electoral votes. Let's look at Senate and governor's races. Let's go back to Georgia, to the Georgia battleground, the presidential race. Still too early to call. You see, we've got about 8% in, but Steve Kornacki's been watching the vote come in Georgia, and we are expecting to see quite a bit of vote come in Georgia within this first hour after poll closings. Now, let's go to some Senate and governor's races. This is the Senate race, very closely watched Senate race in the great state of Ohio, where incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown is facing Republican challenger Bernie Moreno. NBC News projects that this is too early to call at this hour. And in West Virginia, we have a projection in the Senate race there. Now, this is the Senate seat that was held by former Democrat, now independent Joe Manchin. This is not a surprise. The Republicans have picked up the Senate seat in West Virginia. NBC News projecting that Republican Senate candidate Jim Justice will take that Senate seat in West Virginia, which, of course, is a Republican pickup. That's the one sort of lockdown, absolute guaranteed Republican pickup in the Senate this year. This is the Senate balance at this hour: 29 Democrats and 40 Republicans. With that seat in West Virginia, Republicans have one Senate pickup. Looking now at the North Carolina governor's race, this has been a very, very high-profile governor's race in North Carolina, in large part because of the controversial nature of the Republican nominee, Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson. NBC News projecting at this hour in the North Carolina governor's race, it is too early to call between Democrat Josh Stein and Republican Mark Robinson. And in West Virginia, we've got a governor's race as well. Democrat Steve Williams against Republican Patrick Morrisey. This is an open seat as Jim Justice leaves to run for Senate. In the West Virginia governor's race, NBC News projecting this is as yet too early to call. Over to Steve. Again, in the great state of Vermont, the incumbent Republican governor of Vermont, Phil Scott, has been reelected. NBC News can project that Phil Scott will hold on to his gubernatorial seat in Vermont. He is a moderate and anti-Trump Republican in Vermont, a very blue state with a moderate Republican governor. Joining us now, we won't always have them. We won't always have data for you right at the top of the hour, but we'll tell you everything that we know as soon as we know it. All right, we're less than 10 seconds away from 8 p.m. Eastern poll closings, again, in more than a dozen states. We're going to start in the most closely watched of all of them. At 8 p.m. Eastern, NBC News can project in the battleground state of Pennsylvania in the presidential race, it is too early to call. In the state of Florida, NBC News can project that there is a winner. NBC News projects at poll closing in the state of Florida that Donald Trump has won the state of Florida. In the state of Massachusetts, NBC News projects a winner, projects that Kamala Harris has won the state of Massachusetts. In the state of Tennessee, NBC projects a winner, projecting Donald Trump to be the winner in Tennessee. In Maryland, NBC News projects that there is a winner in the presidential race, and it is Vice President Kamala Harris. In the state of Missouri, NBC projects a winner, Donald Trump, projected to win the presidential race in the state of Missouri. In the state of Alabama, NBC News projects the winner of the presidential race is Donald Trump. In the state of Oklahoma, NBC News projects that the winner of the presidential race is Donald Trump. In the District of Columbia, which for some reason isn't a state, NBC News projects we have a winner. The winner is Vice President Kamala Harris. In the state of Illinois, NBC News projects that it is too early to call. To the Northeast, in the state of New Jersey, it is too early to call in the presidential race. In the state of Connecticut, NBC News projects it is too early to call. In the state of Rhode Island, NBC News projects it is too early to call. Down back to the deep south, in the state of Mississippi, NBC News projects it is too early to call. Back up again to the far northeast, NBC News projects that in the state of Maine, it is too early to call. In the always interesting state of New Hampshire, NBC News projects at this hour it is too early to call. And finally, in the home state of President Joe Biden in Delaware, NBC News projects at this hour it is too early to call. So now we head to the overall national map as these candidates try to beat one another to the all-important threshold of 270 electoral votes. Vice President Kamala Harris, the Democrat, right now at 27 electoral votes, and Donald Trump at 90 electoral votes. Looking back at some of the battleground states where we're watching the vote continue to come in Georgia, we've had polls closed since 7 o'clock with some straggling precincts that have been held open for various reasons. Still too early to call in the state of Georgia with 1/3 of the vote in. Also, North Carolina, another crucial swing state. Polls closed there at 7:30 Eastern time. We've only got about 5% of the vote in North Carolina, and NBC News projects that it is too early to call. Looking at a few key Senate races. Pennsylvania Senate race, at this point between incumbent Democrat Bob Casey and Republican challenger Dave McCormick. NBC News projects the Pennsylvania Senate race is too early to call. In Florida, Senate race here, NBC News projects there is a winner. Incumbent Republican Senator Rick Scott projected to have won another term for his Senate seat in Florida. And in Maryland, very interesting Senate race in Maryland. This is an open Senate race in Maryland. Democrat Angela Brooks against Republican former Governor Larry Hogan. Again, this is too early to call. The Senate race in Maryland, too early to call right now as of NBC News' latest projection. The Senate at this hour, Republicans hold 42 seats. There is one flip thus far, and not a surprising flip, but it is a flip in Republicans' favor in the seat that in a presidential race in the state of South Carolina. NBC News now projects that Donald Trump is the winner of the presidential contest in South Carolina. Back to you, Steve.
Yep. I was just checking in on a couple others there, but so Pennsylvania again, and I'm just seeing if anything else came in.
Well, presumably the first of many more times. In North Carolina, in the governor's race, NBC News can now project that Josh Stein will be the Democratic governor of North Carolina. He was up against the very controversial Republican candidate, Mark Robinson. Republicans tried to get Mark Robinson off the ballot, thinking that he would not only certainly lose this race, but he might lose it by so much it might even drag down the prospects for Donald Trump and J.D. Vance in North Carolina as well. But NBC News can now project that in this race, the governor's race, Josh Stein will be the winner. Back to you, Steve. NBC News can now project at this hour that we have a winner in the Rhode Island Senate race. Democratic incumbent Senator Sheldon Whitehouse has been reelected in the great, mighty state of Rhode Island. NBC News can also project that there is a winner in the Senate race in Massachusetts. Democratic incumbent Senator Elizabeth Warren will be returning to the Senate for another term. NBC News can also make a projection in the Connecticut Senate race. Democratic incumbent Senator Chris Murphy will be returning to the Senate for another term. NBC News can also make a projection in the Senate race in Tennessee, where incumbent Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn will be returning to the United States Senate. At this hour, this is the standing in the United States Senate: 32 Democratic-held seats, 42 Republican-held seats. That reflects the Republicans picking up one seat. They picked up a seat in West Virginia, the seat currently held by now independent, previously Democrat Joe Manchin. We've also got to look, interestingly, at the Indiana governor's race. This was one to watch. I said earlier, NBC News can now project that the Republican candidate for governor in Indiana has prevailed over the Democratic candidate. This is Mike Braun, the U.S. senator who decided not to run for re-election in the Senate, to instead run for that governorship in Indiana. A strong challenge from the Democrat there, although a Democrat hasn't held the governorship in Indiana in 20 years, so it would have been a big upset. It is the Republican, Mike Braun. Eastern polls closed in the great state of Arkansas, and at poll closing, NBC News can project that the winner of the presidential contest in Arkansas will be Donald Trump. Stephanie Roll.
Floridians for Freedom is the group that worked to get this abortion measure.
In the presidential race in Delaware. There's a winner in the presidential race in Delaware. The winner is Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris. Nicole, you're going to jump in there.
I mean, I think we're going to be watching these dynamics, and they're not going to fall in the way that we receive data, right?
But NBC News can now project the Senate race in Delaware. This is an open seat, the seat that had been held by Democrat Tom Carper. It's Republican Eric Hansen versus Democrat Lisa Blunt Rochester. NBC News can project that the Senate seat in Delaware will go to Lisa Blunt Rochester. NBC News can also make a projection in Delaware in the governor's race. Governor's race in Delaware goes to the Democratic candidate there, Matt Meyer. So Delaware with the presidential race, the Senate race, and the governor's race all going. The Maryland Senate race has been called. NBC News has not made a projection in the Maryland Senate race at this hour. I will let you know, though, as soon as we do. It is 9 o'clock on the East Coast, and let's look at some calls. We've got a lot of states closing. NBC News can project at this hour in the Michigan presidential race that it is too early to call. In the just as crucial swing state of Wisconsin, NBC News can project in the presidential race that it is too early to call. In the equally crucial swing state of Arizona, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too close to call. In the great state of Texas, NBC News projects that there is a winner, that Donald Trump has won in the great state of Texas. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential race in North Dakota. The winner is Donald Trump. NBC News also projects a winner in the presidential race in South Dakota. The winner is Donald Trump. NBC News also projects a winner in the Wyoming presidential race. The winner is Donald Trump. In the great state of New York, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. In the great and now very closely watched state of Iowa, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. NBC News projects also that the presidential race in Minnesota is too early to call. NBC News projects that the presidential race in Nebraska is too early to call. NBC News projects that the presidential race in Colorado is too early to call. The projection in Louisiana is that it is too early to call in the presidential race. The projection for the Kansas presidential race is that it is too early to call. And back to the Southwest, in New Mexico, NBC News projects that the presidential race is too early to call. Looking at the road to 270, with those races called thus far, we've now got Donald Trump standing at 154 electoral votes, Kamala Harris at 30. The NBC News projection in the state of Rhode Island is that there is a winner in the Rhode Island presidential contest. Kamala Harris is projected to win the presidential race in Rhode Island. NBC News can also project in Mississippi that the winner of the presidential contest is Donald Trump. NBC News can also project in Louisiana that the winner of the presidential contest is Donald Trump. To make, NBC News can now project that the presidential race in New York has a winner. Kamala Harris has won the presidential race in the great state of New York. Steve Kornacki. Oh, wait, hold. Two people just spoke to me at once. What did you say? Looking at the road to 270 map, Donald Trump with 168 electoral votes. Kamala Harris at 62 electoral votes. See, things are going. NBC News has made a projection in the presidential race in the great state of Illinois. Democratic candidate Vice President Kamala Harris has won the presidential contest in Illinois. Right now, this is the road to 270. Trump at 168 electoral votes, Harris at 81. I've also got an update for you on a couple winner in the presidential race in the great state of Ohio, home state of vice presidential running mate to Donald Trump. Donald Trump is projected to be the winner in the state of Ohio. Again, no surprise there. Ohio used to be. We've got a projection in the presidential race in Kansas. NBC News can now project that the winner of the presidential race in Kansas is Donald Trump. We're heading towards a 10 p.m. poll closing in Nevada, Utah, Montana. As we head toward those, we're keeping an eye. All right, we are coming up on a poll closing at 10 p.m. We're just about under 10 seconds now until 10 p.m. closings in some very interesting states. Let's have a look at the presidential race. NBC News projecting in the presidential race in the great state, the swing state of Nevada, it is too early to call. NBC News projecting a winner In the presidential race in Utah, Donald Trump projected to win the presidential race in Utah. NBC News also projecting a winner in the presidential race in Montana. So Nevada, too early to call. Trump win in Utah, Trump win in Montana. Looking back at the battleground states that we're still awaiting definitive calls in Georgia, it's too close to call between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In Pennsylvania, it's too close to call between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In Wisconsin, it's too close to call between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In Michigan, sing it with me now, it's too close to call between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. In North Carolina, it is too early to call between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. And in Arizona, it is too early to call between the two presidential contenders. Let's look at Senate races right now, including in some of the states that have just closed with 10 p.m. Eastern time poll closings. Looking at the Senate race in Montana, incumbent Democratic U.S. Senator John Tester facing a challenge from Republican Tim Sheehy. That is too early to call. In the Nevada Senate race, where incumbent Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen is facing a challenge from Republican Sam Brown, that is too early to call. In the Utah Senate race, this is also considered to be too early to call. Let's look at some calls from Senate races from the 9 p.m. poll closings in New York State. NBC News can project that Democratic incumbent Senator Kirsten Gillibrand will be returning to the Senate for another term. NBC News can also project a winner in the North Dakota Senate race, where incumbent Republican Kevin Cramer will be returning to the Senate from North Dakota. NBC News can also project a winner in the Senate race in Mississippi, where incumbent Republican Roger Wicker will be returning to the U.S. Senate from Mississippi. This is the status of the United States Senate at this hour. Again, no surprises. 44 seats held by Republicans. That includes one net gain seat, a flip they got from the West Virginia Senate seat that was previously held by independent Joe Manchin. NBC News can project in the presidential race in Colorado that there is a winner in Colorado, that Kamala Harris has won the state of Colorado. Joy, what were you saying?
No, absolutely. I was just going to say on the real
NBC News now projects there's a winner in the presidential contest in Iowa. Donald Trump is projected to have won the presidential contest in the state of Iowa. We also have a look at some Senate races. NBC News is projecting a winner in the Maryland Senate race. Angela Alsobrooks, the Democrat, will be the next senator from the state of Maryland, defeating Maryland Republican Larry Hogan. NBC News also has a projection to make in the Senate race in Texas. Incumbent Republican Ted Cruz will be returning to the Senate for another term. NBC News can also project a winner in the Wyoming Senate race. Incumbent Republican Senator John Barrasso will be returning to the United States Senate. And now let's look at Nebraska. Unusually, Nebraska has effectively two Senate seats on the same ballot, which is rare. But that is because this one is a special election. The Nebraska special Senate election is to fill the remainder of the term of Ben Sasse, Senator Ben Sasse, who resigned. Pete Ricketts has held this seat since January, so he's running for it in this special election as a de facto incumbent. NBC News can project that Pete Ricketts will hold on to that seat in the Nebraska special Senate election. But now there's another Senate election in Nebraska, and this very interesting one. This is incumbent Republican Deb Fischer, who is facing no Democratic challenger, but she is facing an independent challenger. And the independent challenger is Dan Osborne. At this point, this is too early to call in this Senate race in Nebraska. Again, of the two that were on the ballot, this one too early to call, even as the special Senate election in Nebraska, the other Senate election in Nebraska to do. First of all, there's a Senate projection to be made in the great state of Virginia. NBC News projects that Democratic incumbent Senator Tim Kaine will be returning to the United States Senate from Virginia. NBC News can also project in Missouri that the incumbent Republican Senator Josh Hawley will be returning to the United States Senate as well. Steve, over to you. In Nebraska. Now, as you know, in Nebraska, the electoral votes are allotted by congressional district, so I need to be specific here. NBC News is projecting that Donald Trump will win overall the state of Nebraska in the presidential contest, but at this point, NBC News is only comfortable attributing 3 of the 5 electoral votes in Nebraska to Donald Trump. Again, they will go congressional district by congressional district. There is still a chance here that although Trump is winning the state, that Harris may get an electoral vote or 2 out of it. It has projected that in the Senate race in New Jersey, the Democrat Andy Kim will be the next U.S. Senator from the state of New Jersey. NBC News can also make a projection in the governor's race in New Hampshire. And this was an interesting one to watch. In the end, it looks like it will be Republican. Former U.S. Senator Kelly Ayotte will be the next governor of New Hampshire. The current governor of New Hampshire is Chris Sununu, an incumbent Republican. The Republicans are really hoping to hold on to this governor's seat and in Kelly Ayotte's victory in New Hampshire. 11 p.m. Eastern, and poll closings in 4 western states. We're getting close to the end of all the poll closings here in the United States of America. 4 closing right now in California, Idaho, Washington, and Oregon. In terms of our projections here, NBC News can project a winner in the presidential race in California. Kamala Harris, California native, is projected to be the winner of the presidential race in California. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential race in Idaho. Republican Donald Trump projected to be the winner of the presidential race in Idaho. Up to the Pacific Northwest. In Washington state, the presidential race in Washington state projected by NBC News at this hour to be too early to call. Similarly, in Oregon, NBC News says in Oregon, the presidential race is too early to call. Let's look at the overall electoral college. The electoral vote map right now, Donald Trump stands at 214 electoral votes. Kamala Harris stands at 145 electoral votes. Again, not a single swing state has been called as we're watching vote continue to come in all of them. Right now, looking at some battleground states that haven't been called. This is Georgia, too close to call, a difference of about 136,000 votes between the 2 candidates. Here's Pennsylvania, too close to call, a difference of about 119,000 votes between the 2 candidates. Here's Michigan, too close to call, a difference of just under 75,000 votes between the 2 candidates. Here's Wisconsin, also too close to call. Fewer than 30,000 votes separating the 2 candidates. Over to North Carolina, NBC News projects that the race there is too early to call. Over to Arizona, NBC News projects the race is too early to call. And in Nevada, we've got too early to call. That's the projection from NBC News. Let's look at Senate races right now. We've got interesting Senate races in some of the states that just closed. In California, where Democratic Congressman Adam Schiff is facing off against baseball guy, Republican Steve Garvey. That Senate race in California is too early to call. I'm being informed by the control room that baseball guy is not the right way to think, right thing to call him. I apologize. I'll revise that in a moment. In the Senate race in Washington state, incumbent Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell is facing off against Raul Garcia. This is also too early to call in the Senate race in Washington state. This is the Senate at this hour. 48 Republicans seated in the Senate. That includes 1 Senate pickup for the Republicans. The pickup they had was in West Virginia, where independent Senator Joe Manchin gave up his seat, decided not to run again. A Republican picked that up. There are 37 Democrats in the Senate, 15 uncalled seats as of yet in the United States. NBC News can project a winner in the presidential race in the state of Oregon. Vice President Kamala Harris has won in the state of Oregon, per NBC News' projection. A few calls that we have to make in Senate races. NBC News can project that there is a winner in the Senate race in Ohio. This is a Republican pickup. This is incumbent Democratic Senator Sherrod Brown losing his seat to Republican challenger Bernie Moreno in Ohio. NBC News can also project an interesting Senate result in California. Now, this is Adam Schiff, the Democratic candidate in California, is projected to have won this seat. I need to tell you, though, he wins this both in terms of the regular Senate contest, but he also wins the special, which means that the seat that was vacated by the death of Dianne Feinstein, where LaFonza Butler has been in that seat since Dianne Feinstein's death, Adam Schiff will not only take over the full term of that seat, he will also take this seat immediately in the Senate from California. One additional call in New Mexico, the Senate race in New Mexico. NBC News projects that incumbent Democratic Senator Martin Heinrich will be returning to the U.S. Senate. At this hour, this is the balance of power in the United States Senate. And this was a big one because this means a +2 net gain for the Republicans. They are now at 49 seats. Democrats are at 39 seats. There are 12 seats uncalled. We've got to go in a moment. We're going to go to Michelle Norris, who is at Harris campaign headquarters. We've got a couple of projections from NBC News. In the presidential race in Connecticut, NBC News can project that the winner of that presidential race will be Vice President Kamala Harris. NBC News can also project that we have a winner in the presidential contest in Washington state. The winner there, also Kamala Harris. NBC News can also make a projection in the Senate race in Washington state. In that Senate race, we've got an incumbent Democratic Senator, Maria Cantwell. She will be returning to the United States Senate from Washington state. Steve, over to you. We have that projection. There we go. The Senate race in the great state of Minnesota, Democratic incumbent Senator Amy Klobuchar will be heading back to the United States Senate. Amy Klobuchar reelected in Minnesota. We're going to take a quick break right now. There's a bunch of other Senate races right now where we haven't checked in for a little while. The important Senate races in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Nevada, Montana, Nebraska. Lots of interesting Senate races still to come. We're going to check in on those on the other side of this break. Stay with us. NBC News can project at this hour in the presidential race in the state of Virginia that there is a winner in Virginia. Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris has won the presidential contest in the state of Virginia. NBC News can also project a winner in the presidential contest in North Carolina. NBC News projects that the winner in the presidential race in the state of North Carolina is Donald Trump. This is our first projection of a result in any of the 7 big swing states. The first swing state to be projected by NBC News tonight is North Carolina, going to Donald Trump. I understand we also have a change in the characterization of the presidential race in Minnesota. In Minnesota, this had previously been characterized as too early to call. Minnesota now characterized by NBC News as too close to call. Looking at the overall map, the road to 270, right now Donald Trump stands at 230 electoral votes. Kamala Harris stands at 185. Again, of the 7... You guys didn't know that's how I usually do it, right?
That's how you make it happen.
NBC News projects that the governor's race in Washington, the Democrat Bob Ferguson will be the next governor in Washington. Republican opponent Dave Reichert. But the Democrat Bob Ferguson will be the winner there. I had mentioned that we were going to talk about some of the tight Senate races that we've got right now. We are still going to do that. But I want to go first to Philadelphia. Our own Jacob Soboroff is at the tabulation center in Philly, which is kind of the center of the political universe right now. Jacob, we are closing in on the top of the hour. Joy, I'm sorry. Just under 10 seconds to a poll closing tonight, a single poll closing tonight. NBC News, as the polls close in Hawaii, NBC News can project that in the presidential race in Hawaii, there is a projected winner, Kamala Harris, projected to be the winner in the presidential race in the state of Hawaii. Right? Yes, there it is. In terms of the road to 270, those 4 electoral votes from Hawaii make the road to 270 look like this. Trump right now standing at 230 electoral votes. Harris standing at 189. Again, the only swing state that has been called thus far by NBC News is North Carolina, which has been called for Trump. But here's a look at the other battleground states. In Georgia, it's too close to call, a difference of under 120,000 votes between them, with 93% of the vote in Georgia. In Pennsylvania, too close to call. 84% of the vote is in. Just over 200,000 votes between the two candidates in Pennsylvania. In Michigan, it's too close to call. 44% of the vote in. Difference of about 100,000 votes between them. In Wisconsin, it is too close to call. We've got 3/4 of the vote in, just under 90,000 votes between the two candidates. And in Arizona, it's not too close to call. It is too early to call. You see just over half the vote in. Also in Nevada, it is too early to call. We've got 2% of the vote in Nevada. All right, let's let's look at where the Senate stands right now, actually. Forgive me. In the Senate race in Hawaii, where polls just closed at midnight Eastern time, NBC News projects the Senate race in Hawaii at this point as too early to call. This is Democratic incumbent Mazie Hirono. Sorry for my confusion there for a moment. I thought we were going right to this slide. This is where the Senate stands at this hour. There are still 10 uncalled Senate seats, which is a lot. Republicans have a net gain of 2 already. That's in Ohio, Sherrod Brown's state. They flipped to Bernie Moreno, and that is in West Virginia, where Jim Justice picked up the seat that was previously held by independent Joe Manchin. For the second time this evening, NBC News is able to make a projection in a battleground state. NBC News now projects that in the battleground state of Georgia in the presidential race, Donald Trump has prevailed in the presidential race in Georgia. So again, of our swing states, we've got 2 called thus far in Georgia and in North Carolina per NBC News. That puts the electoral map at Donald Trump with 246 electoral votes, and Kamala Harris at 189 electoral votes. Again, both candidates aiming at 270. Of the 7 of the 7 states that we consider to be battleground states, 2, North Carolina and Georgia, have been called by NBC News as of this hour. Both of them called for Donald Trump. Steve, over to you.
Yeah, and Rachel, what we can
NBC News can project at this hour, and this is a big one, that the Republican Party will control the United States Senate. Now, what tipped this over is that NBC News is also projecting a couple of Senate races since we last checked in on Senate. Right now in Nebraska, incumbent Republican Deb Fischer is projected to have held off a very stiff challenge from, interestingly, an independent challenger, Dan Osborne, not a Democrat, but an independent, ran a very close-fought race against incumbent Republican Senator Deb Fischer. But NBC News now projects that Deb Fischer will be returning to the Senate. Shows you a little bit about how things proceeded in this Nebraska Senate race. I should also tell you that earlier than this, in the Utah Senate race, NBC News has also projected a winner in the Utah Senate race. This is the seat that is being left by Mitt Romney, by Utah Senator Mitt Romney. It will be held by the Republicans, by Republican candidate John Curtis. So after John Curtis secured that seat and Deb Fischer secured hers, that puts the Republican control of the Senate on the books, according to NBC News projections. Lawrence, let me just get your reaction to that.
And this is huge because in the event of a
project that in the presidential race in New Mexico, there is a winner, and the winner is Democratic Vice President Kamala Harris. When the Trump campaign was getting very, very, very cocky about how they were going to do tonight, they started talking about expanding the map, expanding to Virginia, which they lost tonight to Kamala Harris. They talked about expanding the map to New Mexico, where they sent Donald Trump in the closing days. Now NBC News projects they have lost New Mexico to Kamala Harris as well. We shall see. Has a projection to make in the presidential contest in the swing state of Pennsylvania. NBC News now projects that that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. Now, I believe that means that we are at a 266 electoral vote count for Donald Trump. Kamala Harris at 194 electoral votes. So to be clear here, this is the third of the 7 major swing states that have been called. But Georgia and North Carolina and Pennsylvania, as those 3 states, presents an almost it presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. In terms of what's going to happen here next, we are expecting that Donald Trump is going to speak to a bit of news to make. NBC News can make a projection for the presidential race in the great state of Minnesota. NBC News projects that Minnesota has been won by Vice President Kamala Harris. So Donald Trump, at this hour, Donald Trump has 266 electoral votes. Kamala Harris has 204 electoral votes. The speech that Donald Trump just gave was essentially a victory speech. At this point, NBC News has not projected a winner. More news. NBC News does have a projection to make in one additional presidential race, this time in the state of New Jersey. NBC News projects that the winner of the presidential race in New Jersey is Democratic candidate and Vice President Kamala Harris. New Jersey, believe it or not, was one of the states that the Trump campaign was sort of bragging on. Were they able to expand the map? They said that New Jersey was one of those states they'd be able to win. They said the same thing about Virginia. They said the same thing about Minnesota. They have not been able to expand the map, but they have won important swing states already that have put them on the precipice. 266 electoral votes. Right now for Trump, 218 for Kamala Harris.
For her to go, but they
Steve Kornacki, I just have to jump in. And you've been predicting this. We've been waiting for it. And we do have some breaking news from the decision desk. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump has won the state of Wisconsin, which means he is the winner of this race and will return to the White House as this country's 47th president. And for so many of you watching right now, that news is, to say the least, a lot to digest. I understand that personally. After he lost 4 years ago, he refused to accept the outcome and incited a violent insurrection on our nation's capital. He's campaigned while facing criminal indictments related to his efforts to overturn the 2020 results, and he's run as a convicted felon. During this campaign, he has also promised to essentially be an authoritarian leader, to use power like no American president ever has before, and wield that power to go after his political enemies. This is a man who's also bragged about overturning Roe v. Wade and stripping away women's bodily autonomy. He's promised to conduct mass deportations to crack down on the rights of millions of Americans. Donald Trump is an anti-democratic force, but he's just been elected democratically in our country. And here's what might be the hardest part to hear, but we have to talk about and we have to say, and it is a hard part to digest for all of us. But we have to be honest about what we saw in this election. Donald Trump was elected by expanding his support over a number of key groups that we've been digging into this night, all night tonight, as we anticipated where this was headed, and I know we're going to dig into it throughout the course of the day today. And there will be a lot of time spent on how and why he won and what this will mean for the country over the next 4 years and beyond. But in this moment, it's also important to remember that our democracy is not built around one person or one job. And I have every confidence that pro-democracy forces in this country will continue to stand up and make their voices heard. That's what we saw after 2016 as well. Some of those voices will be governors, some of them will be elected officials, some will be institutions and organizations standing up for rights and standing up for women's bodily autonomy and standing up for our climate. Some will be citizens, and many of you sitting at home right now digesting this news right now, some of them will be you. I wish I had better news for my daughter later this morning. I know Tim Miller and I were talking about this earlier, when she and so many others wake up to this news. I wish I could have called her and told her that the first woman president had just been elected. I wish that. I won't be able to do that. But what I can do, what I can tell my daughter, and what I will tell my daughter, is that our roles as American citizens have never been more important than they are right now. I can tell her that there are still lots of good forces out there, forces for good in this country, and that they are going to be getting to work.
Overwhelmingly, it's looking like he's on track to win all 7 of those battleground states. We've also been talking about Republicans taking control of the Senate, and we have another call to make now. NBC News can project that John Tester of Montana has lost his Senate seat to Tim Sheehy, the Republican in the state of Montana, adding another Republican, Joe, in the Senate column as well.
And we still have 3 that are being contested in the upper Midwest, in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. We'll be following those tallies. Those are going to be very close right now, but Republicans already have the majority in the United States Senate. Obviously allows them to appoint justices, also get Donald Trump's elections for cabinet officials through without much resistance at all.
One more state to call. Donald Trump adding to his electoral count. NBC now projects he is the winner of Michigan and its 15 electoral votes. State that Joe Biden won in 2020 by nearly 3 points. Now Donald Trump is the winner there. You see it, almost 50% of the vote to Kamala Harris's 48.3, with 99% of the votes now in. And there you see the overall projection there. The major metropolitan areas that were won by Kamala Harris around Grand Rapids, Lansing, and Detroit. But overwhelmingly what we saw was the rural areas, the smaller areas, as we would have expected Donald Trump. And there's our road to 270. And you see now the updated number, Donald Trump with 291 electoral votes. Let's bring this to Thank you for that. We have another projection from NBC News now projecting that Tammy Baldwin, the Democratic incumbent in Wisconsin, the senator, has been reelected. She's been in office since 2012, ran against a venture capitalist, Eric Hovde. But this means that there has been at least this bit of good news on what has been not a very good day for Democrats. Tammy Baldwin, the projected winner, by, as you can see, less than 1%. Again, showing strength in Madison, where we saw a lot of activity around the university there, lots of long lines, Milwaukee, as you would expect in those areas of the big cities. She is the only Democrat to have gotten a number of endorsements, including some that typically might go the Republicans' way, the Farm Bureau. So here's where we're left for the Senate with the uncalled races. Maine, Pennsylvania, of course, also another of the battleground states, along with Arizona, Michigan, Nevada. There you see the list there.
NBC News is able to project that Vice President Kamala Harris has prevailed and carried the state of Maine. There it is, magic music. Kamala Harris projected the winner of Maine's 3 of 4 electoral votes. Yamiche Alcindor, this may not be a speech that you plan to deliver, or that several high-profile races for the United States Senate. Mini Timaraji mentioned this one. NBC News projecting that Democratic Congresswoman Alyssa Slotkin will win the open Senate race in Michigan. Now to some other races that at this hour so far remain uncalled. In Pennsylvania, NBC News is characterizing the race between Republican Dave McCormick and incumbent Democrat Bob Casey as too close to call. Similar story over in Nevada with Republican Sam Brown and incumbent Democrat Jackie Rosen locked in a race that NBC News is right now calling too close to call. And finally, in Arizona, Democrat Ruben Gallego is facing off against Republican Kari Lake. That race is right now too early to
make. NBC News can now project that Donald Trump is the winner in Alaska, picking up 3 more electoral votes. Again, he already met the threshold needed to become president-elect, but it does give him 3 more electoral votes in terms of the Electoral College. Donald Trump winning Alaska. Now he has 295 electoral votes, with a couple of states, as you can see there, Nevada and Arizona, not called yet.
This Arizona call that we've been waiting for, it is now official. President-elect Trump has earned 312 electoral votes. That's his highest across the 3 elections he's been a part of. Now, this is a state that has a significant Latino population.
Democratic Congressman Ruben Gallego will defeat his Republican challenger Kari Lake in the Arizona Senate race. Gallego will take the seat of retiring independent Senator Kyrsten Sinema, who caucuses with the Democrats, preventing another GOP gain. He will become the first Latino to represent Arizona in the U.S. Senate. At this hour, with one race still to be called, Republicans control the Senate, 52 seats to 47. It's worth noting that the Senate Democratic candidates prevailed in 4 key battlegrounds. To your point, Joe.
But if I can, we are just saying that NBC News is projecting that control of the U.S. House of Representatives is going to go to the Republicans. Control of the House. That gives Republicans the trifecta. They will control the White House. We saw they just elected a new leadership team on the Senate side, and control of the House projected by NBC News to go to Republicans. I want to bring in Republican strategist and former Burgum presidential campaign spokesman.
Close Senate race in Pennsylvania between Republican Dave McCormick and Democratic incumbent Bob Casey. And literally in the last 90 seconds, as Vaughn was speaking, we're hearing from Senator Casey, who I believe, Julie, is conceding.
He is. He actually said in this 3.5-minute long video that thanks to my team, I'm frantically looking at what was said. And it is that he had called McCormick, his Republican opponent, to congratulate him, hereby conceding. Remember, there was a recount ordered in this race. Casey pushed for it. McCormick said for some time that he was the victor in this race. The recount went on. They were close, less than 0.5 percentage point. Clearly, it seems like Casey has accepted his defeat in this situation, ending an 18-year career in the Senate. McCormick unseating an incumbent. Remember, McCormick is somebody who faced Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz, back in a primary in 2022. So this has been a long road for him as well. And this also means that Republicans have officially cemented 53 seats in the Senate.
I would just say, Julie,